I was thinking about fear, looking at your hat. No. I don't fear the hat. I was thinking about fear as I was preparing these sermon notes, and I was remembering the things that I was afraid of when I was little. The unknown whatever in the hall closet outside my bedroom. I was thinking about, things I've done that were probably not smart, like, walking across Central Park at night in the mid-'80s. Thinking about stupid things I've done, like, driving recklessly and almost losing control of a car, stuff like that. And then I was thinking about how fear has sort of changed in my life over the years. And I became aware of the fact that there is a common thread through the things that scare me nowadays. And it is that the things that frighten me are relational. I'm not afraid, for example, that I'm going to get some serious illness. I'm afraid what that would do to Grant, my husband, how it would disrupt his life, how it would make him sad. I'm not afraid of being a victim of violence, except that I'm afraid of how it would make my mother cry. I'm not afraid of being myself, except in as far as being myself means becoming vulnerable to you. That frightens me. I remember the first time that I said I love you to my spouse, and there we were sitting together talking about I don't even know what, and I said these words, "I think I'm falling in love with you." And he said, "You think?" Yeah, right? My fear of actually just saying I love you made me qualify that profession. I edited myself because I was afraid. So at least in my experience, this fact that fear is relational has to do with that fundamental fear of being disconnected from the other person. I'm afraid that if I put my whole self out there for the other person, then they will reject what I have to offer, and then what do? I mean, you can't walk back, "I love you. I love you." April Fools. But what I'm learning is that the remedy to this kind of fear is just showing up, despite the fear. Because the only way to make fear continue to grow inside is to do exactly what the disciples are doing in today's gospel. They're hiding from what they fear. And just like that imaginary monster in the closet from when I was a kid, what you hide from grows. So if you spend all of your time hiding from fear, it will just grow within you, which is right where the disciples are on the first Easter. They are locked in their fear. So I think that just as fear is relational, so the remedy to fear is also relational. Jesus shows up in this gospel story. He just shows up as he is. He's both wounded and he's resurrected, which is to say that he shows up as a fully human being. He bears both wounds and new life, as it must be for all of us. The only way to new life is through our wounds, which are, frankly, mostly relational too. Jesus comes to his friends as they are, fully human, and charged with divinity. He breathes his peace and his forgiveness upon them and throughout the universe. And the fullness of that breath is everything. It makes everything new. Forgiveness and peace make everything new. And those are relational things too. So although there's a chapter 21 in John's Gospel, what you just heard is the original ending of John's Gospel. These are the words. There were many other signs that Jesus worked in the sight of the disciples, but they are not recorded in this book. These are recorded so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing this you may have life through his name. The entirety of what Jesus brings to his friends is so that we might have life, just as he has life. But when we're afraid, that is a hard thing to believe. So I invite you on Bright Sunday, and for the rest of your life, to pay attention to the first part of this original ending, to these words. There are many other signs that Jesus worked in the sight of the disciples, but they are not recorded in this book. Some of the signs not recorded in this book are being authored by you. There are many other signs that Jesus is working in your life, many other signs of God's work in the world. And the truth is, Jesus just can't accomplish everything that needs to be done. Your life and what you do with your life really, truly is the next chapter. There's this thing about resurrection, whatever that means. There is this thing about resurrection which begins at some point in the past, but it continues to affect the world of the future. And that's part of the story too. We get to author our own finishing touches to the story that begins with Jesus' resurrection. We get to breathe the same forgiveness and the same peace. I think that was an amen. We get to breathe the same forgiveness and the same peace into the universe that Jesus breathed over his first disciples. And I don't really know what that means. I don't know what that means in detail. I don't know if I understand it or if you understand it. I don't know if it makes sense right now. But that doesn't matter because the story is continuing. My telling you that your story continues the resurrection of Jesus is just my testimony to you. But your own experiences of the resurrection, of the new life that God gives to the world, that is the place where the resurrection will begin to be seen, begin to make sense, begin to be real. And this, more than anything, is the assurance that comes from the resurrection. When you begin telling your story, because your story is continuous with the story of what God is doing in the world. And that's when the resurrection comes. And then the fear, which, may have some hold over you, the fear doesn't have to be the final word. Because God resurrects us not just for ourselves. God resurrects us so that we can be freed from fear and live for our fellow human beings. Then the power of the resurrection begins to spread more and more and more. Then Christ, rising from the grave, will break open the doors behind which we in our fear are hiding, and then we become truly free. The disciples hiding in the upper room sounds familiar to me. Hiding in fear sounds familiar. And probably seeing his body was the last thing that Jesus' disciples expected. And his story was probably the last thing in the world that they expected to continue. But they were changed from fear to courage by their own experience. Their fear was banished by their relationship with him. And our fear likewise can be banished by finding our place in this story. We bring everything that we are, everything that we have to the story of God's actions in the world. And just like Jesus, we bring our own wounds and our own resurrection. The truth is that very, very, very few people ever saw Jesus in the flesh, if any. Fewer still bore witness to his wounded and resurrected body on that first Easter day. But I know that Jesus is alive in us because I hear that in your stories. And that we are, each one of us, a part of that good news. So claim your authority. Author this story of resurrection. Tell it however you can. Share it with whomever you find. And look at your relationships. Look at your loves. Look at the people that trouble you. Look at the people that are breaking into your life. And look at your fears. Because Christ is being resurrected in all of those.